Welcome, guys, and welcome to another episode of Finance for Founders, where we bring you inspiring stories from change makers around the world. Today, we are thrilled to have Wyclef with us, a Ugandan entrepreneur. That's Wyclef Sande, a Ugandan entrepreneur, community leader, and founder of Sandfield Travel, a purpose-driven safari experience company with over 15 years of experience in coffee industry. Wyclef's journey has taken him from Uganda to the University of London and beyond, where he has worked with global companies like Nestlé and Nando's. But perhaps most inspiring, his dedication to creating positive social impact in Ugandan community, particularly through his village schools feeding project, which has provided thousands of school meals to children in need. Wyclef, welcome to the show. How are
Very
you?
well, thank you. Wow, what an intro. Thank you.
Fantastic. I mentioned your background in the travel industry, safari, but actually you're more known for your current venture, which is your coffee company, Blue Turaco.
That's
right.
right. Yeah, that's right.
What I want to just that our audience get to know you, what we do very quickly, we do a quick fire questions.
Yeah.
So each one of these questions, try not to be more than 5 seconds in these quick fire questions. And the reason we do this just for that the audience to get to know a little bit more about you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's
Is
okay.
okay? Okay, fantastic. So, pardon the pun. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay. Number one, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
What's your favorite Ugandan dish?
I love posho. Posho is sort of maize flour eaten with beans. That's my kind of favorite.
Fantastic. Books or podcasts?
Books. But of recently, I'm getting into a lot of podcasts, especially as I'm trying to build Blue Turaco.
Fantastic. So, do you have a favorite book or podcasting?
Currently, I'm reading The Coming Wave, and I'm really finding it very interesting, especially as the coffee farmer, coffee producer, processor, but also someone building a brand, looking at it from the AI world and how that could impact. So I would go with the current book I'm reading, which is becoming my favorite. It's called The Coming Wave.
Commonwealth. Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Which became the best advice I've ever received, which has become a philosophy of mine. It was given to me by a great grandfather who said to me that whatever you do it, don't rush it, but don't delay. And so, in everything you want to do, don't rush it, but don't delay.
Don't rush it, but don't
rush, but don't delay.
I love that. Don't rush,
delay,
but don't delay.
It's a contradictory. It's very contradictory when you first hear it, but it's powerful
when you think it through. Definitely. One word that describes your leadership style?
One word that describes me. I think I shouldn't be able to answer that. I think my team needs to answer that. But I think I would say I'm very thoughtful. I think a lot about decisions I do or I make. And so even with my team, so I think thoughtful in its true sense.
Okay. And if you could have dinner with a historical figure, who would it be?
Jesus Christ. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that.
because I would love to ask him a few questions, like physically, if I'm sitting there with him. But I think that I don't know whether that works. That would suffice. But if not that, I would, really, I would love to sit down with a guy called Martin Luther King and ask him not his what we know of him now, but what he was before he became Martin Luther King.
Yeah. 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 I love that. And what's your favorite way to unwind?
Read. I like to, yeah, and walking. So reading and walking, those two things helps me sometimes.
Excellent. Um, Name one place in Uganda everybody should visit.
In the impenetrable forest where the gorillas are found, I think everyone should visit them once in a while just to appreciate and understand the gravity of human or our iniquity as humans. We're so minute when you face with the gorillas. You realize we are nothing.
Absolutely. And lastly, what's your personal mantra or motto?
Do it, don't delay, but don't rush it.
I love that. Once again, Wyclef, welcome to our podcast. We're actually thrilled to have you here. Just for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
My name is Wyclef Sande. I'm the founder of Blue Turaco Coffee, and I've been working in the travel industry for some time, for a long time. The philosophies between Blue Turaco and Sunfield, they're pretty similar, which is using what's available in the communities to create lasting impact. But life didn't start out like that in a way. I was born in a small village in Uganda. I lost both of my parents before I was 13. When I was 8, my dad died, and that really was the catalyst for me to get into coaching. Because after his death, my mother went into a paralysis where she couldn't speak for a year. And during that time, I decided to go and look for something to do. I was 8 years old to figure out what we can eat, how we can go to school, and all those kind of things. So, in essence, I should be retiring very soon because I've been in coffee for a long time.
Wow. So when you said you had to decide what to eat, were you the oldest of a few children? Were there other mouths you were feeding? What was it like?
Actually, I wasn't old. I'm the youngest, but I was the boy. But also, when my dad died, there was a meeting that was set up, and so my sister was taken away, and somewhere, and so I stayed with mama. So during that time, I became a grown up, at 8 years old. I've never been a child myself because of that situation. I had to be the one making decisions and finding out ways how to do. So, in other words, in the Western world at that age, you'd say, I was doing child labor. In the West, in the world in which I grew up, that was a means to survive or a ways to survive.
That's incredible. So tell us a little bit more about what the early days were. You said that your dad passed, your mom couldn't
Yeah.
speak for a year. For yourself, what was life like? You woke up in the morning, you had to drop out of school, you had to go to work. What was it like?
Actually, until that time, we had a very very interesting I had a very interesting childhood. Until the age of 8, I was a very happy, poor child. So we didn't have nothing. We didn't have much, but we had something that I cannot really describe it even today. We were very happy, but poor, extremely poor, but very happy. So my daddy's death really did take him, but it actually killed both my mom and us, emotionally, but not, of course, not physically. So I didn't drop out of school. Because we were in a situation where I had to decide to make a decision. Personally, I needed food, but also I wanted education, and I wanted it very strangely how I believed in education when in a village where not a lot of people were really keen to education because of poverty we are in. So I decided to to go and find 5 people, farmers who I can ask to pick their coffee, and they'll pay me in exchange. And to this day, and I cannot tell you why those 3 people who accepted to give me an opportunity, why I didn't take cash, but I took coffee instead. So I asked them if I can collect the actual physical coffee and be paid into that rather than them giving me cash.
That's amazing. So, so the, you went from Uganda, you went to the UK, you studied in the UK. Tell us a little bit more about your journey from Uganda to the UK and how your passion for coffee was also developed during this period.
I think to bring you to the journey into the UK, we almost need to drive back a little bit. So when my mom passed now, I was 12 turning 13. I didn't have no one to live with, and it was really stuck. So I was taken into extended family as a foster, for them as a foster parent, and I lived there, and they had to make a decision just a two couple of weeks before, like after the burial of my mother. A meeting was convened and was asked who should take this young man. Unfortunately, they had invited me that, they allowed me to be in there, which I think with hindsight and knowing what I know now, I should have never been in that meeting. But no one put up a hand at all. So it became something that I've lived with to this day, which was the biggest form of rejection that you can ever imagine or see and appreciate was committed there. And so I had this moment where you look into the room of 10 people, no one has put their hand up until one person later on said, "Oh, why don't you send this young boy to my ex-husband?" And that's the grandfather I told you that he gave me the philosophy of life. Would do whatever you do, don't rush it, but don't delay. And so that allowed me to live with him for a year. As life would have it, he didn't stay very, very long. He was, 83 at the time. So, and
How old were you?
I was turning 14. So I was just, after death of my mother. So I was about to turn 14. So I was still 13 when I joined with him. So I actually moved to start living on my own at the age of 14. So I went and yeah, so I've been doing life and, living life, but all through all that, I looked for opportunities so I can continue education. And one of those opportunities were, people that I met, and it became almost my own personal mission to make sure that whoever is in my town and is not local, if I hear the sound or whatever, and they're not local, I'm gonna approach them, find out who are they, why are they there, is there anything I can do, to help. And this is how um, I really got into contact with English volunteers that were in my town, and I was helping them and stuff. And then one of them decided to ask their parents if they can um, help me go study at university, and they asked me what I wanted to study, and told them I wanted to study law, and so this is that's the beginning of my journey into the UK, and that's so this family became now almost my family. I would say that a family that is not biologically connected to you, but yet you feel like they are your family. So that's how Heather's family. That's how they became. I came to the UK and I went to university, and they supported me to go through university by paying part of the tuition, and worked all throughout to pay other parts of it.
That is amazing. How did that chance encounter happen? What were you doing? Were you selling
No,
like? How did you encounter him?
in fact,
And this was a British
yeah,
family, right?
this
It was a British family
no, it
living in
was
Uganda.
they were volunteers, so they were young people doing a gap year. And these are
Okay.
people, because personally I never shared with a lot of people until maybe 4 years ago or 5 years ago. I didn't really feel that should share a little bit more about my journey. And so these guys, I met them. They were in the market, and some of them were actually being overcharged. And so I overheard what they price they had mentioned. And so I was like, so I went, and without even talking to them, I said to the seller, I said, look, I just heard the price. What's the price for this? And I said, but you told these people a different price. Why? Anyway, this really, as I told you, I became a self-appointed, overseer of anyone who was in my town from another region, another area. So I always looked out for these people. So anyway, one of them, I became almost like we became friends, and I started telling them, what to avoid, what not to do, those kind of things. And so I built a lot of network with them and a lot of other people, especially then I became a translator. And the reason I was given the translation job for the American missionaries was the missionary said that there's something called Wyclef Bible translators. I didn't know. Anyway, and then those kind of preamble in chance encounters, which I don't really call them as chance, so to speak, because I really believe it was an orchestration, um, a divine intervention into my life, into, so to speak, if you want to call it that way, because the reasons of me being alive, were, and the chances of me being alive up to that time were very slim, because I had been born in the war, born premature. There was, starvation. I was a very sick child. So all these, I put them together, and I don't discount the chance, but I also add a divine intervention to that.
That is absolutely amazing. So these people that you met, you said they were fellow students, they were international students that studied in
There
Uganda?
were volunteers doing a gap year. So when you finish A levels, usually you take a gap year. So these guys would come to my town and go to orphanages, orphanage schools, and they would almost like a cross-cultural learning opportunity. Some of them will be just, learning out, you know, um, sport, teaching sport, or, working with students learn English or that kind of thing. So it's like a great opportunity of different of sorts.
That's amazing. I I was going to ask you, how did it now transition to you coming to the UK from your chance encounter? But first of all, I want to ask you this question. You mentioned when you were in a conversation with family members and you felt rejected because nobody actually wanted you. How's that played a role in your business journey so far? The reason why I say that, you come across as somebody that's confident. I don't think you could have built what you're building without confidence. And most people reject in business. One of the things they fear the most is rejection. Either you're selling or you're going to someone to sell a product, you're going to pitch an idea, and the fear of rejection really consumes people to the point that they never get to see the best in themselves. So how have you managed that process, and how has it played a part in your journey as well?
I often say that although I would never wish anyone to experience a certain level of rejection that I had, especially from your own kind, I should never wish anyone to experience it, but was one and will always be one of the biggest lessons of life. In fact, I always feel that because of that incident, I became a different person. And by that, I mean, I decided to that decision, that incident could have broke me, turned me into a very bitter human, because I have the capacity and I have, 1,000 valid reasons to be bitter and be negative because of how and what my childhood and what I've gone through, but I chose not to. In fact, for me, rejection, especially in the UK, I have faced a ton of rejections, but unknowing to a lot of those rejections or those who are offering those rejections, I have already been practicing being rejected from the age of 12. And therefore, there has never been any form of rejection that could enter me or hurt me or push me in a different way. And I think, it the resilience that you build after encountering a situation like that will stick with you forever, but it will form a foundation. But if you're not careful, it can form a foundation of negative feeling or negative thought. Fortunately, and grateful for that matter, it swung the other way for me, which it made me feel I should always never want to make people feel how I felt.
That's amazing. Honestly, your story is so inspiring. And I'm looking forward as well just to finding out how just the whole experience of lead. You're pretty much an orphan by the age of 14.
I was not.
Your
Yeah,
grandfather,
I was often.
your grandfather as well.
No,
Go
no, no,
ahead,
no. I
go
was
ahead,
just saying
please.
that oh, by the age of 13, I was already an orphan.
But then you went to live with your
Yeah,
grandpa, and then your grandpa now passed away whilst you were 14. And then you began to live by yourself, take care of yourself, fend for yourself from the age of
yeah.
14. And then you now had this chance encounter with these
Volunteers.
volunteers who had come from the UK. Tell us a little bit more about how that relationship brought about your coming to the UK and eventually studying
Yeah.
in the
Do
UK.
you know? Do you know Oasis? The Oasis Academies. Are you in London? Yeah. So
Yes,
yeah.
based in
So
London,
so
yes.
you know these Oasis Academies, and the founder, Steve Chalk, I think, is the founder of Oasis, and so Oasis used to send these volunteers through to come into to go and volunteer abroad, and really part of my experiences with these volunteers was the beginning of the reasons why I started Sunfield Travel. For that matter, it was more to, there were a lot of volunteers who could not afford mainstream, a mainstream prices for going to experience a safari, and I felt it was my duty to make sure that we change that, or I change that, so that people can, the safari experience can be both, or and should be both, an experience for the one who comes to visit, but also an experience, an impact for those who are being found in the area. So my relationship and my friendship has been tremendous with the majority of these people, because they are like sisters to me, and if
Are you still close
very,
to them
very,
now?
very close. I mean, very. I would say,
Wow.
that, you know, it was, and it's been, one of those things that a majority of them were still very, very close. Even before I came for the harvest, now, I was meeting with some of them. So we're still close. We are now raising families. We have like, yeah.
That's
So,
amazing.
and so how did that happen? How did I then come? I think once, if we had about 4 hours podcast, I'll tell you, because we're just scratching the surface on my own story, my own journey, but we'll try and be as brief. Um, what happened was, when one of the girls went back and spoke with our family, said, we have this guy. He's been so great to us. He's looked after us. And when you do things with no expectation in return, but you're doing it because you feel that's the right thing to do. This is how it really made me feel, because I had not, I was pretty contented with what was happening in my life, but also I had a vision and a dream for which I wanted to fulfill, but without, not knowing how that could happen or could work. So one of the young ladies, her name is Heather. So Heather went, spoke to her mom or her dad, and said, we have this friend of ours. He's been really nice for us, um, and then they invited me to come, and I came to see them. That was my first time. So remember, I'm a village boy, right? So now I even skipped Kampala, which is capital city. So I just come to Kampala just to go to leave the country, to go and visit abroad. But during that time of the conversation between me, Heather, and the family and her parents, they asked me a question: what do you want to do with your life, and why? I told them I wanted to go to uni. They provided, they were almost like, said, so why do you want to go to uni? What you want to go to uni? What exactly do you want to study? All that kind of thing. And I told them I wanted to do law. I wanted to go to, to university and do law. But the reasons behind me being a lawyer, becoming a lawyer, was more selfish than most. One of the reasons was, I truly never found out why my dad died. So, and the way he died was really pretty terrible. It was, shut down by his own fellow unit in the army and stuff. So, I really wanted to prosecute someone. So I wasn't studying law to become very well known, high paying, because no one in my village has had ever gone to university. And even my own
Wow.
mother, the last words I spoke with my own mother, one of the less spoken about reasons why I do what I do, is the last few words of my mother before she dies. Um, as I was making food for her. I came and she told me a bunch of stuff and she told me, really sorry to leave you in this world, in wicked world. But I know you will be strong, you'll be fine. And I told her, yes, I'll be fine and I'll go to, I want to go to university and I want to study law. And she looks at me and holds me and says to me, please do not say that because I don't want you to be heartbroken. No one in all our villages here has ever gone to university, let alone study law. So don't
That's
let
amazing.
your those hopes because basically she was trying to protect me. And I looked at her in the eye. I said, I promise you I'll go to university. I don't know how I will go. And so and she said, but if you ever manage to make it, never forget your villages. Remember, the village was nothing, but she had that insight. And so, I could easily sit in London. I could have stayed in Nestlé and continued working. I could have done anything, and just forget about my sorrows and my childhood traumas and, like suffering and extreme poverty in which I lived. But I've always felt that if everyone climbs on the top of the mountain and has figured out and has not, while you climb, you reach there and you take the ladder on the top, but you don't release it, you have actually not succeeded. And so I felt, part of my life calling is to do things that would have an impact to one person or two. And that's really the epitome of why I do what I do, why I'm right now in Uganda and not in the UK, whereas anyone who gets a chance to leave Uganda or to leave these shores, they would not want to be coming back and doing anything here, which I feel it's a shame.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So you land in the UK, you go through university, you get a job, you get to work for Nando's and corporately for Nestle. Tell us about that journey, the transition from Uganda, settling in the UK, getting education, and then working in the
Us
UK.
is a culture shock. Culture shock. Remember, Ugandans, we are fond of. So, for example, you asked me how are you, and you didn't. I'm not. I'm 100% sure that you might have not realized, but I started telling you a lot. So generally, the culture shock for me, the first thing, my first realization first was, I'm a village boy. Everything in London was foreign to me, was out of this world, right? But also more importantly, culturally, I can come to you and say, Samuel, how are you doing? And I'm actually expecting you to tell me if you had some problem, like night, you had some problems in the night. Yeah, I'm not really that great. Last night it was terrible. All that kind of thing, right? Because in the village, people, when they ask me, I cannot tell them good if I wasn't good. So now picture
Yeah.
this. Now I am going to my lecture and had a terrible migraine. I'm really, really, really struggling with, I'm very anxious of, how things are going to be and stuff like this. And so my professor asked me, how are you? Guess what? I told him he told me, my guy, my guy just walks away. Sorry, man. Sorry, man. I laugh now. I laugh now. But it was the biggest culture shock for me because this guy just, oh, wow. And he walks, right? So later on, I went to him and I said, why did you ask me how I was and you walked away? And he said to me, when we say hi, how are you? If I add, how are you? I'm not really asking, being polite. So for the first time I developed rage in me. I felt, bro, if you don't want to know, that's,
Don't answer.
oh gosh. No, anyway, so that's my first experience. But I have had a very mixed experiences in the UK. Those who are close to me, you know, I'm generally gifted at making connections, making understanding, like people, like in terms of, all my life I've always, managed to find the right people, find the people who are, you know, who have issues that we can actually share, and so because I've never been a child, a majority of my colleagues have been their uncle. So in London, in London, you wouldn't be surprised to find me talking to international students, encouraging them to do this, to avoid doing this, almost like giving them life lecture, because I had lived with older people and had become a grown up at a very young age, and therefore, and I don't drink, I don't smoke, I never went to parties, so I was like really, very cushioned in the way of how I looked at life. And I also, but of course, I had um, a lot of hard parts of the realities of being, a young black man, growing, trying to break into industries with not a lot of, background, network connections, with no history, so to speak. And that was very purposeful. But I already say, what I decided to focus on in my life has always been, even if there is 5 positive things and 95 negative things, I always want to bring out the 5, because if I bring out the 5, they'll allow me to look at life in a very different way, as opposed to the other way. Which, so from that statement, you can tell there has been a lot of things that to a lot of people they'll break them, they will test you, but I have been blessed to always look at the positive side of life and how to use those any negative experiences as a fuel to do good.
That's it. You you came to the UK, you studied culture shock. You then worked for the likes of Nando's and Nestlé. Tell us about your experience then, and then I also want to find out about your transition to realizing that this corporate world is not for you, and then the fire and the passion around coffee and how that started as well.
Briefly, I went to university. So,
My camera may go off temporarily. My camera was go off temporarily.
Yeah.
Please continue.
So I decided, I finished university in 2008, and I just after that I went to law school, and after law school I went to work for Nestle. I worked for Nestle for 2 years, and during that time, I started feeling that I was growing into someone I wasn't. I started feeling this kind of thing where um, my interest in my underlying vision of life and what I really want to do, the impact I was thinking, about the people I left behind, it started to go and grow. And I felt I was becoming someone very different. And so I decided that I really truly want
Wyclef, you
to
frozen.
get back to who I was, through, not through the prisms of corporate life, but through the prisms of, why am I here? Was it a mistake for me to be here? But if it wasn't a mistake, there has to be a reason, thousands of people, to be one of them to be here in this country. And so I chose to ask you those questions, and I went back in on the drawing board. And so I called up, while I was at uni, I used to work for Nando's as, as a student. I called up my MD, or the MD of Nando's for that area for that time. And I said to him, look, I want to leave corporate world. I want to come to work for you specifically so I can build my tour company to fulfill my long-held ambitions. So I worked for them, and I came while I was at Nando's. He says to me, look, I love who you are. I love you as a person. You're amazing. You're great at, service. And so I think, you should come, but don't give up your ambitions. And I said, oh, that's good. So I came and I told my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and I told her what I was planning to do. And she was not very happy. Said to me, why would you do that? But I was very, very confident that this is something that I want to be able to do. And therefore I had to make sure that I bring her on board. So while I'm, working for Nando's and building Sunfield Travel, we are bringing a lot of volunteers, we're bringing a lot of customers who are just going to have wildlife safari experiences. Something continued. So while we're doing that, we're building, classrooms, and we're building, a clinic. We are really creating these opportunities and impact that I truly wanted to be able to do. But in these villages where I'm doing all these projects, there is one recurring thing, which is every 2 years or so, there is a pandemic or there is a disease or they say, oh no, tourists, you can't go to Uganda because there's Ebola in West Africa. And so these kind of things started really getting into my head and asking all the impact I want to do. In most cases, whenever there's a disease, an outbreak, whatever, even if it's not near Uganda, first there will be, they will say to Ugandan government or to tourists and say, don't go to those countries or those part of the world. And I felt there is something that is more that needs to be done. And one of those things that personally I have witnessed it from day one of coming to the UK was I had never found and never seen Ugandan coffee. And yet Uganda is number 2 producer of coffee in Africa and was number 8 at the time. And so this really started going to my head every time I'm saying, why? We have to do something about it. But for me, I was looking at it from, how can I use these coffees? How can I take these coffees from these villages to build something that is transformative? So then in 2016, I decided to go all in on the idea, and I go to the villages and I sat down with a few these people. Remember, I'm still working in Nando's, and this is my holiday, so I don't have really a holiday. I use these holidays to do these things. So I come to this village and I tell them what I want to do and why I want to do it, and the reception was very cool. In fact, one of them said to me, who gives you the right to think that you can do this. No one like us has ever been able to build those kind of opportunities you're talking about. And so to me, felt like it was a challenge. But at the same time, it was a moment of realizing that things are pretty bad if we leave them as they are. If not me to change that, then who else will come to do it? Because for 75 years, these farmers I was talking about and I was talking with, they had the same experience. Coffee is grown, it's given to a big multinational, it's shipped out of the country, and that's the end of it. So they would never be able to know their names, their voices. No one who looks like them has ever done it, and therefore they have resigned to the idea that we are hopeless, we are useless, we cannot build these kind of things. But for me, that was a big challenge. So in 2016, I'd started growing coffee. I started planting some coffees and, utilizing all my childhood experiences in coffee, but now with a different vigor, with a different understanding, but also with another drive. Why don't we have Ugandan coffee in the UK supermarket? Yet we know all that coffee is being shipped out. So, I started mulling and I continue to work, I started to push. So once 3 years later, I had my first harvest and started bring some of those, just the initial samples and stuff. But as luck would have it, in 2019, I came really ready to, launch and build and stuff. And, while I was here in 2019, COVID started happening. And in 2020, as I'm about to come bring sacks of coffee, green coffee to start launching Blue Turaco, then all that happens. So this is that's a short version of how and why these Blue Turaco, was built and is built in this way. But the other part of why Blue Turaco's focus is on robusta, and especially robusta for that matter, 70% of Ugandan coffee is robusta. 30%, and that number is growing. Roughly 30% of other coffee is Arabica. In the UK, my observation was that a lot of impact projects, anything that is being done in the coffee world, in the specialty coffee world for that matter, has always been in the language of Arabica, talking about Arabica. And yet I know firsthand how important robusta coffees are. And so I thought, if we are to truly create a lasting positive impact in the communities where these coffees grow, we have to champion a coffee that is native to these lands. So robusta coffee is one of the native coffees in this country, in Uganda. It still happens, it still grows in the forest. And so therefore, for me, I took it upon myself to answer and ask some questions. Why is robusta coffees not known? Why are they not known? Why are they not very popular? What is it? What exactly is happening with them? And therefore, for me, it became, a self-appointed mission to champion this coffee. Why? Because I've known what being an underdog is, what being invisible. So in a lot of times in my life, in the UK, I could really feel very, very, very invisible. But then I say, how can I channel all these experiences in building this? So I started building a team, and I went to spoke with one of my mentors, Sam, Sam actually, is a brother, is a mentor. So I went and spoke with him and said to him, although tourism and safari experiences are it's a very big part of my overall impact vision, using tourism and safari experiences to create lasting impacts in the communities. I believe that we have huge untapped potential for which anyone, whether you are a cleaner, you are a washer, a sweeper in the road, you are a CEO of, Fortune 100, you will be able to consume this product, which is not the same for a safari experience. Because then I was like, so what is it? Remember, we are Nestlé products. We've worked with Nestlé and stuff. So, I said to him, look, this is what I really want us. I think there is an opportunity, but I don't have the know-how. I know how to build. I know how to grow coffee. I know how to process these coffees, to experiment what I had done up to that time, experiment and ask bigger questions. Why this? Why not? Why, all that kind of thing. But I didn't have any experience in, you know, building, where did the money will come from? What kind of, building a brand and this kind of thing, that where you intentionally doing all this kind of thing. So this is how I really brought a team and spoke with a few of my friends and said, look, I want to do this and I want to do this in a very strategic way, so that we can introduce and create accessibility to specialty robustas, but B, as a smallholder farmer myself, I was feeling there has never been a coffee brand being built by an African smallholder farmer. That has never been. And you know what? If I didn't do it, I don't think anyone was going to do it. Why? Because we are, the status quo has been that we as Africans, in most cases, our role is to grow the raw materials and sell it off. And we're not builders of brands. And to that effect, those observations and those kind of thing in my whys of building were becoming much more bigger, felt like surely there is something there that my whys could not allow me to continue to sleep on it, because Blue Turaco, its vision, its way of doing, what we are really building and standing for. And they're not a 1 week, 1 month, a 2 year kind of thing. It's a 10-year project, which started with growing the actual coffee, with experiencing, picking coffee as a child, as a youngster, but also immersing myself with the coffee culture that London has, asking questions. Why is there no Ugandan coffee? Where does Ugandan coffee go? Why is Robusta not, what is there that we can do to make sure that we can champion specialty Robustas or these single origin Ugandan coffees, so that every home, everyone can actually get to enjoy these coffees, because I knew how great they are. So therefore, this is really how, and ever since I've been trying to write, to push, to change the narrative on what is, who should build brands, which should be, why don't we have a lot of us, with brands available in supermarkets and stuff. So I'm, to be honest, to that effect, we've really, really worked very, very hard. But at the same time, I'm so grateful for so many people. And I think, I don't I don't believe in the idea of self-made. I'm a product, and in most cases, we are a product of a lot of encounters. Some good, some bad, but an accumulation of those encounters allows us to build and become something that we become. And so any success so far seen in Blue Turaco is attributable to a lot of people that I've encountered in life, people who have paid attention to why I do what I do, why am I trying to do. And of course, I've been resilient and in my attitude, in everything that I've done. Of course, as someone who put it recently, that Wyclef, you could have not, decided to do this kind of thing and stuff. But I still contend that we have a lot of people to be thankful and grateful for in how we're building, this brand, but also in elevating, Ugandan coffee. For the first time, you are finding 100% specialty single origin Ugandan coffee by Blue Turaco in Waitrose, in Co-op, on Ocado. Those are not words or statements, I could have told you 10 years ago. Even with my level of positive outthought or positive thinking of always thinking there is a way, and there's, I've never felt like it's impossible. There's no, always felt there's a way. Even with that, it's the beginning of something great. How can we build this, continue to build and enhance these coffees, bring more partners, collaborations, take this company from where we are to 100 million brand in the UK and the rest of the world. This is something that I wake up excited about, but also I wake up very grateful that we are able to start building a brand, a company, product that goes beyond the product itself. But the product itself is the impact, if that makes sense. So the farmers, you go to them, as now I'm here in Uganda during this harvest season, you show them this packaging to these people, and you tell them this, where where the product is and stuff. Of course, a lot of people may not comprehend how big how big an opportunity or how vital it is to say that Blue Turaco Coffee is listed in UK's major retailers. It's just the beginning of the journey. That in itself lies something that is, you cannot really comprehend.